Hello, everybody. How are you? It is so good to see everyone here today. Welcome, welcome, welcome. If I have not had the pleasure of meeting you yet, it is great to see you here. My name is Lauren Beckwith. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a program manager at ISS Guggenheimer. So again, welcome to this month's edition of Lead Grow Deepen. First things first, we would love to hear where you are calling in from. So go ahead and head over to the chat box, say hello to your fellow team members from across the country, and drop in the location that you're joining us from. Now, we are in the fourth year of our Lead Grow Deepen speaker series, which features both internal and external subject matter experts in the food and hospitality industry. If there's someone that you would like to hear from, please reach out to me or drop us a comment in the chat. And for those of you who are joining us for the very first time, the goal of this series really is to highlight the way that we and other industry professionals lead with inclusion, grow diverse representation, and deepen our industry partnerships. And as always, if you have not yet checked out our ERGs, we encourage you to get connected with one of our ERGs and find your community at ISS Guggenheimer. Now, this special edition of Lead Grow Deepen to kick off Women's History Month welcomes back Mboone Umbima, the EVP of Brand Strategy at David Rio Chai. We last spoke with her 2 years ago, and she helped us understand the importance of self-care, practicing gratitude, and how to push our comfort zone. Today, we're going to discuss Mboone's latest work, Reflect and Renew, a New Year workbook, and Who Moved My Comfort Zone, a personal and professional guide to navigating change. I am so excited. Help me out in the chat box to welcome back Mboone Umbima. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm so glad to be back. Thank you for having me again.
Of course. And I feel like you just offered so many insights that were so relevant to all of us, sort of like coming out of pandemic, trying to transition back into normal life, if you will. And here we are again, sort of at the start of the year, and you have a New Year workbook, right? So talk to us a little bit more about what prompted you to release this new workbook, and what is it about like this specific approach, and why do you believe this process has brought you personally so much clarity?
Yeah, so thank you for that. I started doing this process maybe about 5-6 years ago, and I wanted to be able to be intentional about like what I'm looking forward to and what I have come from. And so it's something that I started doing, and then eventually I was like, you know what, I'd love to share the tool the same way that I shared the tool with the gratitude, and then created the gratitude journal. And then also it created this space for us to have this conversation and have this conversation with intention. And so that's where that came from. But in terms of clarity, there's nobody who knows you as well as you do. And so when you go through the process of the book, and I'm sure we'll touch a little bit on it, you're really being in conversation with yourself in terms of, you know, what the year has been like, and then what it is that you want to create for yourself. But then I'll say it's not, you don't have to do it at the beginning of the year like a New Year's resolution. You can do it at any time. It could be a birthday, you know, a significant milestone or a small milestone, or it could be I just want to change something in my life. And so, okay, well, what do you need to change? Let's look at what you've been doing, and then let's create what you could possibly do. So that's where that came from, and that's the inspiration, and that's why there's clarity, because that builds intention.
I love it. I love it. And I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the folks who have joined us. We have folks from San Francisco, from Boulder, from Austin, Iowa, also from San Francisco. So we have got a lot of folks tuning in. Again, if you have questions or comments throughout this event, please feel free to drop them into the chat box and we can include them in the conversation. Now, you mentioned New Year's resolutions, and I was looking up, I was like, I wonder how many people set New Year's resolutions and actually like accomplish them. And it's not great. It's not great. It was like maybe 16% or even down as low as 9% of people who set New Year's resolutions actually accomplish them. And there's so many reasons for that. And I think one of them was like setting things that are too big, setting things that aren't specific enough, and not understanding the why. So tell us a little bit about like, why is your approach different than just me sitting here and saying, it's a new year, I'm going to set New Year's resolutions? And me personally, New Year's resolutions, I always around my birthday set out a list of like one thing to do for every new year. So it was like a list of like 30 something things. And you can imagine I accomplished this many of them, right? So how is this workbook and this approach different from me just saying I'm setting a resolution for my birthday?
Yeah, so two things. Number one, it's I mean, you've already touched on a few of them, which is like it's too big, it's non-specific, or um so it's all those things. But then also, like, if there's no true intention, like if you haven't sat down and written it down and thought through it and all of that, the stickiness is very, it's likely not to be successful. But the other thing is that we don't realize is we're fighting against biology. And where I say that because it's like, you know, you are practicing who you are every day, and that has a stronger hold than something new that you're going to start doing different than what you did before. And the natural reaction, physiological reaction, is that that doesn't feel that great. It feels a little different. You know what? Let's just do what we always did because that works. But that's the biology that you're coming up against when you set a New Year's resolution without the tools and without the intention. And so the thing that I would say is, and I'm going to separate this from the book and New Year's resolutions. If you want to set a New Year's resolution, recognize that you will be going against your biology, and therefore you have to set up a support system in order to do that, in order to be successful with that. But then with this book, what we're doing is we're pausing and we're looking at where we have come from. And then from there, we're curating what is possible. We're not just choosing, it's like, I'm going to lose 100 pounds and then I'm going to start walking every day. And it's not coming out from thin air, or it's not coming out from aspirations. It's coming out from a space of understanding who you are by way of breaking it all down. And then, being intentional about what is possible. And then in the book, like I go into, because it's based on personal psychology. So I'm borrowing things like from Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And what does it look like when you're operating as self-actualized? And so then I have questions in there that allow you to reflect on those things. And then those things are the ones that will guide how you curate what is possible for your future. So we're moving away from the notion of like new year, new me, and we're digging in deeper to who have I been, who am I now, and what could I be, and then now start moving towards that incrementally.
And so if you are somebody who might have set some New Year's resolutions and are finding now, like this doesn't actually resonate with me very strongly, like this could be a really great tool. And I would say that it's that pausing that you talked about that can be difficult and sometimes really scary for people who haven't had, gone through that process where you really are reflecting. And I think that this tool that sort of walks you through the steps can be really helpful for folks who might not have experienced this process before.
Absolutely, because I think one of the greatest gifts that one can give to themselves is to be with themselves in silence, and not many people are comfortable with that. And the reason being is there's a lot of chatter, and you don't know what all that's about, and you don't know, maybe you've not resolved things. But why this book is helpful is because it's like you're going into silence, but it's guided, so you know what it is that you're supposed to be focusing on, even if it's in silence. And
Mhm.
that is in itself can be very fulfilling, because you know you you know
Mhm.
you the best. And I'm asking you questions that help with self-discovery, um, help with self-discovery in a way that is empowering. So, like, for example, there's a section where I ask you, like, what's the best thing that you've discovered about yourself as a result of, and of course there's leading pre-work within the book that helps you now get to that question. And then you discover, oh my gosh, I was really brave last year, and I didn't even take note of that, because we do things and we're just
Yeah.
going. And then now you pause and you're like, wow, I did that. Wow. And then you keep on building on that, and then from there now you can create something else, because you want to create in that energy, the energy where you've discovered your own strengths,
Yeah.
and then you've discovered what you do well, and you've discovered what you enjoy. And so you want to create more of that, but you want to create from that space.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I love that. And speaking of discomfort, so now I was going through, you sent me a preview of the book, so I can't wait to dive in. But I was going through some of the exercises, and I found personally the section about harnessing insights from past achievements to just be a little difficult for me personally. I think I and many individuals, but also primarily women, really struggle with like self promotion, owning our achievements and like talking about them in the I accomplished this, right? And so it'd be helpful if you can share some advice on one, why is it so important for us to be able to own those achievements, and any tricks or tips that you have for the rest of us?
The first thing that I would say is, if you yourself cannot acknowledge that achievement, then how can somebody else do that?
Mm-hmm.
And you're worthy of that acknowledgement, of that achievement. And so I think a lot of people get caught up in two things. Either it's the script that we're given as women. There's also sometimes a cultural script, depending on what kind of culture you come from. But maybe it's patriarchal or whatever. But there's a script that of how women are supposed to be. um, but then there's also ego-driven promotions, which is not at all what we're talking about. It's not like, oh, look at me, I have a very fancy, house, and I do fancy things. It's really not that. It really is about recognizing your own worth and what it is that you're bringing to the table, and then sharing it. And so, for example, like I've given this example many times. A few years ago, I went to see Oprah, and she was giving us a speech, and she was Oprahing. If that's over.
Yes.
And then she was like, well, I don't know, something about my private jet and something. And I was like, oh. And then I was like, wait. Her act of sharing it that way tells me that I too can do that. And that's access for me, to be able to have access to my own achievements, my own ability, and what's possible for me. So unless you're able to own that, like the world cannot acknowledge you either. So it starts first with you, and being comfortable and knowing that what you have to offer is of value, what you have, that you are worthy of that acknowledgement. And once you get past yourself, the rest starts to flow.
Yeah, and I think especially important in the workplace too, right? So like doing the work, of course, acknowledging everything, understanding that like you own your achievements, and then also that historically, like women haven't been the best about self promotion in the workplace and really owning those things. And to your point, if you don't own them yourself and you don't celebrate your achievement, how can anyone else do that?
Yes, and sometimes people don't. The thing is, a lot of us, we work so hard, we do 10 things. Maybe one thing might be talked about, but we did 10 things. And it just happens, it just goes and goes and goes. And usually, in some cases, people notice the value you bring in your absence. We
Mm-hmm.
don't want that. We want to notice that in your presence. And then also, like, if you don't share what it is you're doing, your value gets lost, your value gets lost. And so you have to find it, you have to find your language and your comfort zone of how to express what it is you have accomplished, and so that you're showing the value that you bring, but also now you're opening up yourself for opportunities because of the value you bring. So it's like you're cutting yourself off when you don't do that. You need
Yes.
to do that. You need to
Okay.
do that. Yeah.
The challenge for myself and my fellow peers, if this isn't something that you're doing, be bold, rewatch this, take some advice from Mboone, and let's put this into action. Also, if you're a manager and you notice that like team members struggle with this, like let's work on that and coach them so that they do become comfortable really owning their achievements. Thank you.
Yes, no, absolutely. And you know, some people, like I said, there's that cultural aspect to it, and whatever it is, some people, and including myself, don't necessarily care to be recognized in public.
Mm-hmm.
But then I don't mind if my boss comes and says, "Hey, you did a great job with this and this." And so, just understanding how people also want to be acknowledged
Mm-hmm.
is important, because yeah, you don't want to put somebody up and then now they're so embarrassed and they're an introvert, because it's okay to be an introvert as well,
Yes.
right? And so it's just understanding how people want to be acknowledged, but we should acknowledge everyone.
Perfect. Okay, so let's talk about a couple of the other exercises that you have in the workbook as well. I noticed there were some around letting go and forgiveness. And I would say that, in my personal life, I can probably improve on that. In my work life, I don't really know that I've ever gone through an exercise around letting go or forgiveness. So I feel like there's a lot to gain there. But can you just tell us about these specific elements? How do they impact the intention setting process and the likelihood of like successfully achieving what you set out to accomplish?
Yes, no, that's a great question. And the first thing I would say is that, you know, letting go means that whatever it is that you're doing is not yielding what it is that you wanted to yield,
Mm-hmm.
or it's not showing up the way you needed to show up. It's not serving you. And the thing is, a lot of things that don't serve you energetically drain you. So actually letting it go is replenishing yourself back with the energy that you need in order to go forward with the new intentions that you want to create. So actually pausing and letting go is a great gift, and a great act of self-care and self-love. And then putting it into the context of work, it may not show up necessarily, and it could in some cases, but I hope it doesn't show up this way for anyone. It could show up, you know, in a tumultuous battle, like maybe you're bidding for a job and it didn't work out and all of that, and having to let go of that. Or it could show up as a failed project. Maybe you had your heart and soul like on this project, and you put everything and you keep putting it, and it's not yielding.
Mm-hmm.
There's time to sit. There are times where you should say, pause, maybe I'll come back to this, or you know what, I need to let that go because it's no longer doing what it needs to do, and it's taking my energy. Because if you think about the energy as being a finite source, every morning you wake up at 100% and you keep doing your activities, and it depletes, it depletes, it depletes. But then when you wake up with things that are no longer in your service or working with you, it's like you've already woken up on a deficit. So in order to replenish it back so that you can be your best self, show up with your biggest self, you need to let go of those things. And in some cases, when it comes to forgiveness, it's not about absolving any wrongdoing, especially if wrong was done unto you, it doesn't mean that you're absolving them. It is the acceptance that things will not play out the way you thought they would, or they did not play out the way you thought they would. And therefore, you're releasing it so that you can move on to where you want to go. And
Mhm.
so it's such an important thing. And in this book, at the very beginning, I say, you know what? Make sure that this book is just yours and you can fill it out in your privacy, because the more open and giving you are to the book, then the return, you'll get the return on that. Because the moment you let go of things that you've been holding on to, you'll feel it. And I hear from a lot of my clients, it's like I released it and then things just started happening, like, oh, I got the job and then this happened, and because what you were carrying was heavy. It wasn't
Yeah.
allowing you to move forward the way you could possibly move forward. So that's the importance of letting go, and forgiving.
And I think like letting go, it could be small things and it could be
Yes.
big things, right? Like you, I think you
Yes.
mentioned some comments around some big things, but even small things where you were like, oh, shoot, I said something and I didn't mean to say it like that. Or in a presentation, I choked up on this one area, or I sent this email and it caused, a fallout of this.
Yes.
And you sort of like ruminate on that and hold on to it, and it really brings you down. And so there has to be a point where we say, we recognize that maybe this wasn't the right approach. I want to do something different. And then at that point, release it and open
Yes,
yourself up.
giving ourselves that grace, because the thing is,
Mhm.
a lot of us would never talk to our friends or our colleagues the way we talk to ourselves, like our inner dialogue.
Yes.
We would never do that, never. But then it's like, to yourself, you're like, oh, I'm such an idiot. But you would never go, hey, Lauren, you're such an idiot for blah, blah, blah. Like you would never do that. And so
Mhm.
learning to give ourselves that grace and understanding that we are on a journey, it's not a destination, and the destination was not the mistake that we made. Actually, that was an opportunity for learning and growth. And
Yes.
so if you can see it for that, then now you're empowered to move forward. But just practicing that grace, because it's also a muscle. It's because, especially if you haven't done it, a long time, you have to keep practicing. It's like you hear it and you feel terrible, then you say, okay, I'm human, I give myself the grace, and now I move forward, and then keep building on it. Every time it comes back, keep building on it, because yeah, you're not solving it today, but if you keep practicing it, you start to change your outlook and the outcomes of your experience.
Well, I want to make sure that we still have time to talk about your next book. But just to wrap up around the Reflect and Renew workbook, any last thoughts that you want to share with our group?
So I'll say, anyone who follows me on LinkedIn and Instagram, I for the first 15 people that are able to follow me, send me a message on either LinkedIn or Instagram, and I'll send over a copy for you free.
Wow.
So that's the first 15. I hope you'll send me that message so that we're connected and I can support you in any way that you need to be supported, and you can learn about all of this work that's happening. So yeah, please follow my LinkedIn, and that's my link tree. My link tree has all of it, but if you follow me on LinkedIn and Instagram, first 15 people, you get the book free.
Wow. Wow. Thank you so much for that opportunity. Again, like I said, I can't wait to dive in. This isn't a process that I have participated in the past fully. And so going through these exercises in sort of that guided way, I think is going to be super beneficial for me. And even though it's not the new year, we can start this anytime, right?
Absolutely, anytime. Because yeah, you can make a change anytime, or you can become intentional anytime. A new year doesn't have to dictate it.
Okay. So now let's talk about Who Moved My Comfort Zone, a personal and professional guide to navigating change. That is soon to be released later in this year, right?
Yes.
So can you just tell me a little bit more about why did you decide to write about the topic of change in comfort zones?
Yeah, so and my background is in organizational development, and of course I am a certified executive coach. And what I have found is that every time a client comes to me, it's because they're trying to figure something out, and then
Mhm.
the first immediate step that they need to do is change.
Mhm.
That's the first thing that they need to do. And change, requires you to do something differently. And in order to do something differently, usually you have to go outside your comfort zone. And so that's why I called it Who Moved My Comfort Zone, kind of playing off of, yeah, Who Moved My Cheese, if you're familiar with the book. But Who Moved My Comfort Zone? Because the thing is, most people, so when you choose change, it is palatable. When change chooses you, it tends to be not a many people don't like that experience. Let me
Mm-hmm.
just say that way. So like, let's say you've been knowing that you needed to move out of this house because it's falling apart, but you do nothing about it because it's what you know. And then one day you come home and half of it is already fallen. It's like, well, you could have done something about that when the signs were there, but you didn't. And so the whole idea for me is helping people figure out, like, okay, this is the point where I need to pivot. Let me pivot now so that change doesn't happen to me, and I choose the change that is happening for me. And so that's what inspired it. And there's situations where life happens. If a tornado just comes down your street, there's nothing you could have done to have prepared for that. But how you deal with that is now a choice. You could either look at it as an opportunity to do something different, something new, or you could woe is me, and how could this happen to me. You can have a choice in that. And so that was the inspiration.
I love it. I love it. So, okay, you work with clients as an executive coach. So I'm curious about, like, what are some of the most common reasons your clients have been resistant to change? How do you propose they kind of overcome that? And then also, since we're talking about like Women's History Month, anything in particular you can share specific to women?
Yeah, no, so the main thing, it comes back to what I was saying a little bit earlier, which is we don't recognize that we are going against a very sophisticated system, and this system is the biology of who we are. And so, yeah, there is a comfort to what you know, because that has less threats,
Mm-hmm.
it has less unknowns, it has less ambiguity, and so it feels safe. And therefore, things that are something new, something different, is going to feel uncomfortable, and it's uncomfortable because of the unknowns and all of that. At the end of the day, our primal behavior is to make sure we survive. And
Mm-hmm.
so going outside your comfort zone is literally, in your primal mind, exposing yourself to danger.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore the body will do whatever it needs to do to stop that stop that change, because it's like the body's like, listen, things are working. I don't know why you're trying to change all of this. And so that, I mean, that's the primary reason why that happens. And then for us women, it's like we've been subconsciously trained by culture, society, and all of that to follow a certain script.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I'll grow up, I'll get married, I'll have 2.5 kids, whatever it is. But you're following this script, and that there is, it's not necessarily a bad script. It's just a very limiting script. This is the danger of one story, because the fact that we're all diverse and have different life experiences and all of that requires us to, in order for us to have a fulfilling life, we need to explore who we are and then express who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And we're all very unique and have something very unique to offer. And so with women specifically, I say, like, we're much more embedded in the script, if you will, and therefore it is harder to veer off from the script, because the moment we veer off from the script, it's like, oh, she's self-promoting, as you said. Oh, she's full of herself. Oh, she's, the B word, because, she says exactly what she means. And so it's like the culture too has made it harder for us to veer off the script. But I promise you, and I said this the last time and I'll say it again, everything that you desire that's not in your current experience resides outside your comfort zone. Otherwise, you'd already have it. You'd already have it. And so if you are wanting a change, if you're wanting a new life, if you're wanting a new experience, it's outside your comfort zone. And therefore, you'll need to build that comfort with ambiguity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is really scary. It's a scary process for some of us to deviate from the script, right? Because there's so many risks and so many unknowns. But by going through this process, by utilizing the tools that you have provided for us, we can kind of get more comfortable with being uncomfortable and build that resilience.
Absolutely. It's a muscle. Again, like giving yourself grace, being uncomfortable is also a muscle you build. You build it, you work on it, and yeah, and the more you do it, the stronger you become, the more resilient you become.
Fantastic. Well, we're coming to the close of our time together, but I do know that you wanted to talk a little bit about David Rio, right? So any last thoughts you
Yes.
want to leave us with?
Yes. So the last time we spoke, I think I had shared we name our chai after endangered species and then work with the International Fund for Animal Welfare to fund those programs. So, like, we have this program called Room to Roam, which is our elephant program. And it's based on our elephant vanilla chai. So I just wanted to share with the group that since then we registered our David Rio Foundation. It's up and running because of clients and partners. We have money in there and we're contributing to the Room to Roam project. And we just built a ranger base. At the in Amboseli, which is where we have our largest population of the free range elephants. So that's a big win for us at David Rio.
Congratulations.
Yes, and right now as we speak, I'm in DC. We're about to start talking about financial literacy program for the women in Amboseli that are part of that ecosystem. So that was my big news, and that's what I wanted to share.
I love it. And how can we support?
Drink chai, drink David Rio's chai specifically. David Rio chai, because there's a good percentage of that, about 10% of that goes into the foundation, and then that's the funds that help fund these programs. And the last thing that I'll say is the thing that's fascinated me the most from this work is that we have found a direct link between elephants and carbon sequestration. So when you're looking at the climate change issue, elephants are doing a big job of helping us sequester this carbon that's in our atmosphere. And so if you're asking, like, why should I care about elephants? They're all the way in Africa. Because they're helping us. They're helping us solve this big climate challenge that we have ahead of us. But it's all connected. It's an ecosystem. It's all connected. We are part of that system. And so, yeah, the best way you can help is drink chai.
I think we can
David
do that.
Rio chai.
I think we can do that. Well, Mboone, thank you again so much for spending some time with us and sharing so many insightful tips and strategies so that we can show up as our most authentic, true selves. I really appreciate that. I know that our team appreciates that. Remember, everyone, if you want to connect with Mboone, her link tree is posted here. If you follow her and send her a message on Instagram and LinkedIn, the first 15 will have an opportunity and you'll get to receive one of her workbooks. So Mboone, thank you again so much for taking the time with us today. And everyone, we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.